So today, rather than telling you a whole bunch of things to do in order to become a better housewife or a better homemaker, I'm going to be telling you a list of things not to do. And these are all things that I've learned through extreme trial and error, especially during the first year or so of our marriage. I'm going to be sharing with you a few kind of embarrassing stories, but I hope you can learn from them and not repeat the same mistakes I did, and really start off on a much better foot when it comes to homemaking and being a housewife. Okay, so the first one that I think of that's kind of one of the most embarrassing ones to me is that for some reason I just didn't keep around a lot of extra toilet paper. I'm such a penny pincher that I rarely would buy anything extra at the store. And so shortly after we got married, we had some relatives come and stay with us for the weekend, and I won't give names, but let's just say that he stayed at our house one night, and the next morning he had to go to the grocery store at 6 in the morning to get toilet paper. And so I remember feeling so bad and so embarrassed that my budgeting had gotten so out of hand. And so the first thing I recommend you do not do is not keep enough toilet paper on hand. Tip number 2 of what not to do is to not keep enough food on hand. So for the first year or so of my marriage, I had a really tight budget. I only wanted to spend $50 a week on groceries and all household items. And while I'm all for budgeting, I'm also for actually eating food and having the necessary components to everyday life. And so I remember this one time in particular, a friend of mine stopped by and she had her daughter that was 4 or something, and her daughter started getting really hungry and asked if she could have something to eat. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. The only thing we had was half a can of refried beans. And I had actually been planning that for my husband and I's lunch. I remember just feeling so embarrassed. And I think my friend was just utterly horrified at my lack of skill when it came to keeping things on hand necessary for living. And so that did really encourage me to loosen up the budgeting a slight bit, and we eat so much better now. So now I constantly like to make sure that I have a few extra things on hand in case someone stops by, even if it's just crackers and cheese and deli meat or tons of vegetables or different types of fruit, something like that, so that I'm not put in these awkward situations where I realize my dire need to really improve my homemaking skills. So my third has to do more with food, and that is that I would procrastinate for such a long time before I would go to the grocery store. Rather than just being disciplined and having an exact day of the week that I would go and planning out my meals like I do now, I just feel like I'm a different person in so many ways than when I first got married. I would just put it off and put it off. And so don't put off for tomorrow what you could get done today. It will help you so much. I feel like some of these flaws were so blaring that I've really had to transform myself in some of these areas, and I'm so glad because I feel just so much more in control and so much happier with how my home runs. So although I encourage you not to procrastinate, I also encourage you not to overfill your days. And I know for myself, there were quite a few evenings when my husband would come home from working on a project or helping other people, or come home from his job, to find me just completely overwhelmed because I have tried to make tons of meals. I had tried to go grocery shopping. I was in the middle of painting the kitchen and the bathroom. I was trying to visit with some people that stopped by. This is actually a true story. The trash can's just overfilled, billowing out with garbage. And so while I highly recommend that you don't procrastinate, I also highly recommend that you just get some routines, some schedules. And remember the quote that my mom tells me, which is saying yes to one thing means saying no to another. So don't bite off more than you can chew and completely overwhelm yourself and overwhelm your poor husband who has come home from a long day of work. Number 5, don't not do your dishes every night. This was a huge bad habit I had to break, and I have pretty much completely broken over the past year because it was so frustrating waking up every morning to a full kitchen of dirty dishes to the extent that you couldn't even get your cup under the faucet. I don't know why I did it to myself. Our dishwasher was broken the majority of the first year of our marriage. And so I did hand wash everything, but still, I just didn't have a good reason. I didn't have a good excuse. And it was something that I could have fixed, and I didn't fix for a long period of time. So don't go to bed with your sink full of dishes. And the next thing is to always put in that little drain when you drain the sink of the dirty water. For some strange reason, I would always take it out because I thought it drained faster. And then like halfway through living at our old house, my father-in-law actually had to use a plunger to like unplug the kitchen sink because it had so much buildup in it. And I think my husband actually had to redo some of the plumbing underneath the sink, which is pretty embarrassing because it was something that he would constantly tell me, hey babe, could you put that in the sink before you drain it? So I don't know why. This is just a really practical tip. I'm sure basically everyone does all of these things. I don't know why I guess I just had some serious problems. And the funny thing is, I grew up in a family of 6 kids. Like, I have no excuse. I grew up doing dishes. I don't really have any reason why I feel like I just kind of failed in certain areas as a housewife for the first little while. Another tip is to not burn your neck with hot oil when you're cooking hamburgers. I don't really know how you can avoid this, but turn down your burner or take it off the burner before you take the lid off, or just whatever you need to do in order to keep your neck looking good. Where the oil burn, right there. If you are looking for ways to simplify your life and get it a little more in control, like I feel like my life has just been transformed over the past year or two, and so you're looking for some constructive habits to start, or some just practical ways and practical tips that you can simplify and make your life just a little bit easier, then I will link down below my whole video series on really simplifying your life and strategies that I've discovered since this whole chaotic episode of my first year of marriage and trying to figure out what on earth I was doing and breaking bad habits and all. I will link that down below. Check it out. It will help you out so much. So you guys, those are my few tips of what not to do in order to become a better housewife. These are such simple things. I feel like basically everyone does these things, but I don't know, maybe they need to be addressed. Because for some reason I feel like there were just some areas I majorly failed in my first year of marriage that if I had just been diligent and broken the bad habits quicker, I could have really improved my environment at home, creating an atmosphere of peace and love, and being more productive and getting more done. So thank you for watching. I hope this was kind of a fun video, and have a great week. Bye!